America's most interesting Senate race is here in Colorado, and we are seeing our first poll of the Democrats who are salivating at a shot at Republican Senator Cory Gardner. The surprise poll number belongs to somebody who isn't even in the race. No, it's not former Governor Hickenlooper or Congressman Joe Neguse or Congressman Ed Perlmutter. They were not polled. It was somebody else, which left politics guy Marshall Zellinger with a few questions.
In a just-released poll of 350 Democrats and 150 unaffiliated voters, former House Speaker Andrew Romanoff is the top choice when asked if the Democratic primary were today, who would you support? The 500 people who answered were given 6 specific names to choose from. Romanoff, Mike Johnston, who finished third, Alice Madden, Dan Baer, John Walsh, and newly elected Secretary of State Jena Griswold, who finished second. Wait a minute. Griswold's not even a candidate.
Given regular reporting on the prospects of whether or not Secretary of State Griswold would run, we included her name. Given the sort of regular denials from Governor Hickenlooper on his interest in running, we decided not to include his name.
We wondered if Griswold's name was included because of who paid for the poll, a group called Next Senate PAC. It was just formed in June. 7 people, all from Colorado, contributed almost $25,000 to the PAC, and 6 of them gave considerably to Griswold's campaign for Secretary of State.
Did you do this poll on behalf of Jena Griswold?
Not to my knowledge. This poll was done on behalf of a PAC that is looking at Colorado and other states that are highly targeted.
That is what a poll looks like, understandable. This is the guts of the poll. The only thing I want you to look at is this word right here. This says switch to Jena. This is a tab, I'm told, that kind of implies the questions were asked a certain way. Then you talked about Jena Griswold a little bit, and then you asked, would you now switch to Griswold versus this specific candidate? Almost like a fingerprint was left on this, the data here, implying we wanted to know how Jena Griswold would do in this poll.
Who do you like? Oh, that guy? Would you consider switching to the woman that we like? That's why'd they leave that on there? They could have just cropped it off, right?
I'm still waiting for an answer for that. Yeah, they could crop it off easily.
This, if it wasn't so bumbling, it would be hilarious. All right, thank you, Marshall. I mean, it's not like there's a shortage of qualified women in this Senate race. I mean, there are a number of lesser-known candidates, but then there are some bigger names. Alice Madden, former Democratic leader of the Colorado House, she's running. And State Senator Angela Williams of Denver, who announced last night and came in to talk to me today. As a number of people in this Senate field race to the progressive left in the primary, it seems like Williams is trying to stake out some more moderate stances.
Cory Gardner is not representing the values of Coloradans. That's it.
Do you support the idea of Medicare for all as proposed by Senator Sanders, among others?
You know, I know that we need to have a conversation in Washington about how we provide. I think that we need to look at if Medicare for all is the best solution for the people of our country.
Would you lean more towards the idea of improving on the Affordable Care Act, on Obamacare, before you would look to universal single payer?
I would probably look at improving the Affordable Care Act before moving on.
Okay. Do you support the Green New Deal as it's currently proposed by progressives in Congress?
You know, the Green New Deal has a lot of good points to it. I believe there's some other things that we do need to work on, but the main point of it is how do we protect our environment?
Former Governor Hickenlooper has said that he does not want to run for the Senate and that he probably wouldn't be very good at the job. That said, if he decides that he wants to get into this primary, would you leave and clear space for him?
I will not.
Why is that?
I believe that everyone has a right to their aspirations and that I am a candidate that is qualified to run, and I will run against John Hickenlooper if he stays in the race.
I imagine, though, if he were to get into this race, that the two of you would sound a lot of similar themes in terms of finding workable relationships, bringing people together, looking for common sense solutions. I hear echoes, certainly not always the same issues in the same manner. How would you distinguish yourself from him?
I think I would distinguish myself from him as being, number one, a woman in the race. I think that I'm a qualified African-American woman in the race, and I believe that I have fought on for constituencies like the underserved, communities of color, small businesses, and I think we'd have to differentiate ourselves on those policies.
In my full conversation with Senator Williams, I asked why she chose to be in Washington meeting with national groups about this Senate race at the same time that her death penalty repeal at the state capitol was floundering and ultimately failed. That full conversation is on the next YouTube channel, where you will find interviews with a half dozen of the Senate primary candidates. The city of Brighton is having an epic water fight tonight. City council might fire the city manager, and one councilman says his colleagues are doing that to cover up massive overbilling for city water. Tonight's agenda says city council will consider putting manager Philip Rodriguez on leave effective immediately. City Councilman Matt Johnston tells us the real issue here is that the city manager was looking into $70 million in excess water bills. This is money that Johnston says the city collected to use for projects, but didn't use for projects and did not return to residents.
The 4 members directly to my right are all right now trying to plan a way to fire the city manager, to terminate him. It's been going on since literally 2 weeks after the water was uncovered.
Councilman Johnston's trying to preserve an audit of the water department. Say he's worried it's not going to happen if the city manager is fired. We reached out to Brighton Mayor Ken Kreitzer's office. They said they're not going to talk about it until tonight's meeting. So we'll be there. Remember Inglewood Public Works' plan to go in and buy homes in flood zones? Not going to happen. City Council decided it's too expensive and too much legal trouble. So instead, they're going to focus on repairing old pipes under Oxford Avenue that keep causing flooding. It's a $40 million fix that's going to cause monthly utility rates to go up $7 to $8 per house. The University of Colorado's new president came in amid controversy, and he seems intent on creating more of it. He got a special exception so he could hire his old chief of staff without looking at other candidates. Angelique Foster is going to be a project manager for the strategic planning process. She'll be paid $132,000 a year. She worked for Mark Kennedy at the University of North Dakota and at George Washington University. She will be working on CU's strategic plan. As we've told you, when that plan is complete, then President Kennedy receives one of his many bonuses. Petitions to recall Democratic Governor Jared Polis are being printed as we speak, and small businesses across the state have agreed to have those dismiss Polis recall petitions available for people to sign. Organizers will need all the help they can get. They're trying to pull off an unprecedented feat. They say they're looking for 900,000 signatures in 2 months. Now, they need about 600,000 of them to be valid, and they told me they think they can do it without the paid signature gatherers that are usually used. We'll keep you updated. The death of Ross Perot early this morning has America remembering Perot's third-party run for president in 1992. He got nearly 19% of the vote. Less remembered is Perot's less successful 1996 run for president. And less remembered still is how that was supposed to be Colorado's former governor Dick Lamb on the ballot. So here's what happened. Perot had built the Reform Party into a real third-party contender, but Perot wouldn't commit to running for president again. Governor Lamb tells me Perot straight up told him to his face that he wasn't going to run. So Lamb jumped in, and then Perot followed, and he demolished Lamb in the Reform Party primary. Lamb told me that he thinks Perot was just looking for some competition. It's clear Lamb's still bothered by it today. Ross Perot, billionaire, political outsider, lover of competition. He was 89 years old. Our next question comes from our next viewer named Robert. He wants to know whatever happened to DIA's baggage system, the one that failed to launch in 1995. Robert asked, have they made any attempt since the original colossal failure to resurrect that beast? That system is still intact underground at the airport, but DIA says it has no plans to bring it back to life. It would have been this fully automated, computerized system moving baggage on 22 miles of tracks and conveyor belts, state of the art, except it didn't work. It delayed the airport's opening 16 months. So instead, airport workers use underground tunnels and carts to move the baggage through the Illuminati layer. That video from that Ward Lucas story, I swear, never gets old. All right, so license plates, things happen to them. You know, they get bent, they get damaged, they get stolen. When that happens, you're supposed to go to the DMV and get a new one. But then some people do things differently, and that is today's edition of Presented Without Comment. You almost have to really, admire the tenacity here. LJ snapped this photo. It's a truck with a paper license plate where they just wrote lost tag, a plate number, and then you guessed it, Florida. Florida man. After we talked about hikers and climbers buying a card to fund search and rescue efforts, we heard from people who hunt and fish saying they are the ones footing the bill. And they're not wrong. Another of Colorado's outdoor challenges, how to convince wildlife not to like us so much.
We're using paintballs, cattle prods, air horns, and things like that.
They wouldn't be doing that if people knew how to Colorado. That's next.
Welcome back. A beautiful summer day, a day in July with this. Blue skies, very little cloud development, and a break from the severe weather. And our high today, right about where it should be for this time of year. We'll see temperatures a couple of degrees cooler tomorrow and then really warm up as high pressure pushes the storm track to the north. We'll be in the mid-90s for the second half of the week. Now tonight, a little area low pressure to the north may bring in a slight wind shift that will drop temperatures a bit tomorrow, but there's not enough moisture for cloud cover, let alone thunderstorms tonight or tomorrow. And temperatures overnight will be very comfortable as well, mid-50s and 60s, and that's where we start you off on Wednesday. Tonight, fair skies, 58 degrees with light winds, sunshine, 86 tomorrow, a dry day. I think we get another dry day on Thursday, but temperatures soar. 20% chance of gusty storms Friday and Saturday, and then temperatures continue above average with a relatively dry forecast, but just enough cloud cover to make it interesting. This great shot from Lou Sadler out of Castle Rock, Kyle.
Kathy, thanks. So a bunch of you hunt and fish, and we know that because we heard from you yesterday when we talked about those $3 cards that the state sells to hikers and climbers and tubers and such in order to fund search and rescue operations. A number of you wrote in asking why we didn't mention all the money that comes in from hunting and fishing licenses for that purpose. It's a good point, and there's no slight intended. We looked at those Corsair cards because it seemed like with so many people being rescued from creeks recently, people who choose to go into the water should know how they can help pay for the rescue that they might someday need. A good number of you knew that hunting and fishing licenses contribute the lion's share of those search and rescue funds. Fishing licenses account for 42% of the fund. That's about $204,000. Hunting generates 24%, about $119,000. So if you're tubing and you get in trouble, thank somebody who hunts or fishes. Stop feeding wild animals. You would not think we need to say that, but clearly we do because people in Colorado are, well, struggling with the concept. Since coexisting with the animals who also call our state home is so hard for people to grasp, we are going to allow Noel Brennan to explain that's now how you Colorado.
We're on Mount Evans. This is supposedly the highest paved road in North America.
We built the road, but we can't lay claim to the peak.
Oh, spectacular. It doesn't get much better than that right there.
We are guests on Mount Evans, and these guys are residents.
People come from all over the world to come look at this incredible view and also to get a glimpse of our bighorn sheep and our mountain goats up here.
Where they live.
I'm the wildlife biologist for this area.
Lance Carpenter works, and humans aren't making his job easy.
It's been going on for years, but it seems like it's getting worse.
It seems some of us are sharing food for selfies.
Potato chips. I've heard of people feeding them carrots, green beans, lettuce, ham sandwiches. This isn't what they eat.
A sheep shouldn't eat a sandwich, and a goat has got to find a better place to hang than on the hood of an SUV.
We're kind of having some trouble here with our mountain goats and bighorn sheep becoming habituated to people.
So used to us?
Yeah, this isn't natural.
Even the tiniest is bold enough to crash an interview.
Yeah, so that's a kid. That is a baby mountain goat born this year.
Colorado Parks and Wildlife wants to convince residents to be wary of guests.
We're using paintballs, cattle prods, air horns, and things like that.
They're policing humans, too.
We want to be at least 50 feet away from these guys, give them plenty of space.
We can all visit, and they can live in peace on this peak.
We just want the wildlife to be wild and have the people up here enjoying this because it is beautiful.
Even without a ham sandwich. For Next, I'm Noel Brennan.
Viewer named Becky just emailed in and says, I hope those paintballs are being used on the humans. Parks and Wildlife says they know it's tempting to blame out-of-staters for the misbehavior, but they have photos of cars with Colorado plates and goats being fed out the windows.
The idea is that if you could bring along a vial of bacteria that could help you grow some material.
Bricks made of bacteria.
CU Boulder researchers think they can grow building materials.
So it's a kind of a hybrid living material.
That's next.
So you're being sent to the moon or to Mars, and once you're there, you got to build places for people to live and work. Bringing along a spaceship full of bricks probably is not an option. Handful of bacteria makes a lot more sense. That's what CU researchers think about their bacteria that grows into bricks.
We've been able to show that these bricks have the same structural load-bearing capacity as conventional mortar. Here we're demonstrating on the lab scale that you can actually grow multiple bricks in an exponential fashion.
Shrubar's team of 8 researchers are about halfway through their project to create living hybrid building material. They combine the bacteria and sand in a brick mold, and they grow a brick over the course of a few days. They say they can also split those bricks in half. They add more food for the bacteria, and the bricks then grow back to full size.
When we manufacture the bricks, the bacteria are quite happy. We keep them at a nice 37 degrees C, or that's 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Biology really likes that temperature, as you may well know. So we keep that at an elevated temperature and when we first grow the bricks. And then when it's ready for in-service applications, we cool it down. And during that process, there's an extracellular hydrogel that kind of encapsulates the living organism. And at lower temperatures, just like when we refrigerate our food, bacterial metabolisms subside.
Isn't that cool? It makes perfect sense when he explains it like that. So they envision these bacteria-built bricks being used for material in space. They think perhaps they could be used in temporary military structures. They could quickly create a retaining wall to stabilize soil, something like that. As you might imagine, the Department of Defense is very interested in this project and is sponsoring it. A lot of us learn how to ride a bike when we're kids, but then there are the adults who never learn to ride. You can imagine how intimidating that would be. That's why CSU is rolling out an adult bike riding program. I mean, basic stuff, how to prepare to ride, get on the thing, basic bike safety, rules of the road. CSU, their target for this is staff. They're trying to get more staff members to ride to work in the upcoming fall and spring semesters. They're asking people to report back about their experiences. If you're interested, there's the email of the guy you can talk to. Food, it is no excuse to cross the line, especially if it's in a parking lot with lots of options. That and your feedback. Next. Some drivers clearly are hungry for an extra parking space or two, so they're going to take a bite out of yours. You can tell them you've crossed the line. T didn't care how good the burritos were at Renegade and Thornton. You can't come in hot like that, not even with your Jeep. Buy as many burritos as you want, but 1 space per person, even on Taco Tuesday. I love this. This is somebody who's like, you know what, I bought it. Let's see what it can do. Keep the photos coming. Email next@9news.com or get our attention with the hashtag HeyNext. We finish with your feedback as always, and John G. writes in to say, how about required How to Colorado classes for all new residents? Ooh, could you imagine that? What would you put in a How to Colorado class for new residents? You know how to get in touch with me. And Jerry, all the way up in Gillette, Wyoming, writes in to say, respectable restraint on your presented without comment segment. I couldn't do it. I don't know that I did either. See you next time.